And here we are to talk about pop-up stalls. And welcome members of the public, media, and we'll just hand straight over to you, Max.
Yes, good afternoon, councillors, your worship. I am Luke, Principal Quality Advisor, and with me have my manager Carrie and Penny Pierce. Purpose of this workshop is to respond directly to councillors' resolution they made on 20th March to initiate this high-level analysis of approaches to manage pop-up stores in the future. So we've got these 4 topics here that we'd like to get guidance from you on, and just emphasise that the focus of this workshop is definitely about the future of managing pop-up stores in the district. We're not particularly seeking to sort of re-examine past decisions or particular challenges. It's important context, but just important note from us. In terms of the process, as you would have seen, working through this slide, there's a bunch of red boxes with questions in them. And if it's okay with you, to sort of talk up to that point and seek guidance. Thank you. So, in terms of the scope of the workshop, again, just emphasising that we're focused on short-term options here to manage pop-up stall trading, and in particular in the areas of Queenstown Lakefront and the wider Queenstown CBD, including the mall and Beach Street. There's some things that are out of scope just for this moment in time. They're listed there. Detailed discussions on the nature and scale of trading, the detailed analysis of sites, for example, anything outside of these areas, so anything outside of the Queenstown CBD, longer term options, and obviously we're not expected to make any decisions at this time. So this is just a quick overview here of sort of how the policy process will work for this particular project. We're at a stage sort of in the middle here, we're through the identifying issues that's been well canvassed, as I sort of mentioned earlier. We've done some early stakeholder engagement, and we're seeking some guidance from you at the moment on some short-term options. And we'll work through those next steps in the coming months. So, a bit of background and context first, and in particular around how the current bylaw works for managing pop-up stall trading activities. So there are essentially 2 pathways that the bylaw provides to grant, if you like, a permission or approval for pop-up stall activities to operate. So the first is that registration pathway, which essentially sets up a sort of permitted baseline where people demonstrate or commit to us that they are going to be compliant with bylaw conditions. And that second pathway, there is the permissions pathway, which is an alternative where another sort of approval is required, being a permit where they aren't able to comply with the conditions, or they're located outside the permitted area, for example. And so, the upshot there is that the current bylaw will set up a really high trust, really flexible model with limited controls over these activities. And there's a bit more information in attachment A. And so, just carrying on that sort of point there around the high trust flexible model, what we've seen over time, over the last number of years, is quite a large increase in the number of registrations or activities that have been provided for, and most of them have been approved or sought permission to operate in the Queenstown town centre or in particular the lakefront. And so what you can see there is a large increase over the years, and then a bit of a dip off as we work and have implemented our prohibitions or greater restrictions in the areas of the town centre. And interestingly, not as many approvals sought for locations outside of Queenstown.
Ask a question?
Sure.
just about Arrowtown and what drove that sudden massive increase, and did that kind of manifest in people actually using the space and any issues?
Yeah, so we think it's because of the reaction potentially to the more restrictions in town centre here. In terms of the actual realisation of activities on the ground, I understand that hasn't happened. So,
Thank you.
So yeah, as a result of this large increase over time, we've seen these concerns raised. Once again, they've been well canvassed through your previous decisions. They're listed there. So I guess the main point is that it's been concerns from the community, from businesses, but also in terms of the practicality of bylaw for trading, people who undertake trading activities. As a result of those concerns, we've obviously been on this pathway with this journey rather. We've come from a point in April 25 where we decided to impose some prohibitions and cease issuing permits, through to 19th March, where we decided to continue that prohibition, but also to initiate this program that we're on now, talking to you about. And we've had this judicial review decision, which you'll be aware of. So yeah, where we've started from with this project is doing some early stakeholder engagement to try and understand the key priorities and outcomes of all the different groups that have an interest in particular in the town centre area, to start off with at least. So we did these small group discussions where we had really good turnout, really good feedback from the traders, as well as discussions with a range of other stakeholders, and we had an online survey as well. And that was really useful in terms of giving some context to these areas of agreement and disagreement, and those are sort of outlined in more detail. And in attachment B, we've got some additional information on that feedback from the different groups. The key areas, I suppose, the availability of the lakefront for trading is something that remains to be resolved, I think, between the different parties. So yeah, moving on to topic 1 in terms of the area that we want feedback from you on. So this slide and the next slide sort of is the starting point for this conversation, because it asks guidance from you as to whether we want any trading of any scale over the short term in the Queenstown town centre area, including Lakefront, Moore, Beach Street, and the remainder of the town centre. So I guess we've got this opportunity now. We know that there is some trading that's taking place on the Moor, and that's for those reasons that are outlined in that note. But on the lakefront, there's no trading taking place. So council, I guess, has options available to it. So do we want to continue to look at prohibiting trading in the area, or is there any form of trading at any scale, density that you'd like for us to explore? So the current prohibitions could be retained or removed or modified.
That's a good question.
Can you just, because I know this is so confusing. So the people, the traders that are trading in the mall currently, is that still capped, or people can?
Well, it is in that it's not that there was we only accepted applications that were received prior to 17th of April.
Okay, yeah, okay. So that's again another sinking lid. Yes, okay. But we have the option to call it quits on that now.
That's within your powers and due course, if you like to make a resolution.
Oh, yeah, my resolution. But yeah, okay, that's fine.
So we can change the prohibitions. What else can we change without a complete change of the bylaws? So what other discretion is there to place limits and conditions on registration? Say, let's not talk about, not registration, sorry, on permitting, because I would do away with registrations.
Yeah.
In terms of permitting, what can we do within this bylaw in terms of setting conditions and
Yeah,
so on?
there is scope to do that. That is actually part of, I think, our topic 3 discussion.
Yeah.
So there is scope for the bylaw to do things without a complete overhaul of it.
Yeah.
But this particular issue is whether we want any trading at all.
Well, for me, that the two things are combined, because I wouldn't say just open it up and go back to where we were.
Yeah. No,
But I would say, yeah, absolutely. If we could change some of the conditions, I would
yes.
look at permitting.
Yeah, and likewise, I'd say that should it be enabled in some areas, I think we need to have a discussion about which areas, and there's some obviously in some, for instances, that aren't currently in the mix. Is a bylaw the only mechanism we have to manage this?
No, so
Is it, in hindsight, is it the best way?
it's one of the options that we have. In terms of it being the best way, I think there's more work to be done on that, and that's part of what we're, and over the coming months, we'll explore that more and come back to you with so if you choose to have any form of trading, for example, if you think that's worth looking at, then we'll come back to you with what we think is.
So there could be different ways of managing it from a regulatory point of view.
So the reason this question is being put at the forefront is if there's no appetite around the table, then that will very directly influence the course of work that staff undertake. Conversely, if there is some appetite, that will entail different investigations. So that's why this is put up first before the other.
I just wonder if we could ask it after we've decided on all the potential,
I
Okay,
think in honesty, you could do it either way.
Yeah.
So we can move on.
yeah, come back to it.
Melissa.
I feel quite strongly on this. I've talked to lots of people, getting lots of feedback on this, and my understanding and what I've also witnessed is all we've done is push the problem somewhere else. So, the problem still exists. We've got too many traders for small areas, and it's not working where it currently is. So in terms of guidance for me, I like it because there's other options further in the paper for us to provide space, but I do not think, given the numbers of traders that want to trade, we cannot manage them in these locations, the waterfront or the malls, without impacting greatly on the enjoyment of those spaces for the majority of the people.
And I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I've said I want to just cast a slightly different outlook on it. The reason too is that I recently was travelling down the mall after the traders had started going up there, and it's actually becomes an accessibility issue for me. So, the mall has got the two sort of verandas where they're quite tight, so you've got to sort of navigate people. The middle of the mall was the one bit I could travel down, and there were outdoor seating that sort of comes out a certain distance and stuff like that. That was the one place I could travel, and now it's obstructed at the end of the mall.
Now it's
So
not full force for you.
and I think the same applies to a large degree to Beach Street because it's a shared space, and a car can come down at least for half the distance, and you don't really have anywhere else to go. So I think that there's an accessibility issue here that I think we need to be mindful of as well.
Okay, John.
Yeah, the predominant concerns of mine as well, access, particularly in emergency situations in the streets. Having spent a bit of time down there doing my own research, sitting in cafes on the waterfront, and making use of some of the stalls, similarly the area near the main wharf, the bottom of the mall, adjacent to businesses that are essentially or arguably in direct competition, but then you have the benefit of like the sports stores all being in one area too. People expect to be able to go there. They can go to an indoor cafe, or they can go to one of the stalls and get food. But similarly, it gets crowded, particularly when there's a lot of people there anyway. So my preference, if anything, would be further along the waterfront, beside the park, but having a permit approach, so you're going to get to that, but to manage who's there so that they are compatible and not in direct conflict. with other activities would be best for me.
I think so.
You're talking between, Marine Parade near the Memorial Arch, like,
No, the other way, along
Where
the,
they-
is it
Craft
Grenfell
market
Park?
usually is.
where the ground
Yeah, where they tend to be, yeah, where the two,
peninsula.
which has traditionally been used for that sort of activity for 50 years on, at least. I mean, I couldn't go that far. Anyway, thanks.
I think we've got some fairly clear guidance on those current streets. Matt, was there anything that you wanted to add to that stage?
No, I'm happy to hear from everyone else. I think
I'm
that's-
interested in the guidance because it was conflicting. So what is the guidance?
As an option.
I think the guidance was that the Beach Street and the mall and the waterfront area as was is not supported.
Sorry, the waterfront, no. Oh, well, John and I said the opposite.
No, not
Yeah, so this is why I was.
Oh, I see.
confused. I was like, oh, no,
Yeah.
we're not actually talking about.
So
the
if
same
you
thing.
go to topic 3, that map where the red areas are, I think is what I'm hearing, where those red areas are is not supported as being areas that.
But the red area right down by the waterfront doesn't mean that whole area.
No, it's those
Yeah.
streets.
So ironically, although the lines are red, I don't think it's quite that black and white. If you like. So my preference is that both Beach Street and the mall, they be taken out of the picture. There's too much conflict in a range of ways, and there's public safety issues. I think that is true also on the piece of the waterfront to the north from the wharf at the bottom of the mall, along in front of all the cafes.
Yeah.
Same sort of conflicts. When you get to Earnshaw Park, though, there is actually some room for movement, I think, and or some presence. And because the thing that, having worked in and lived in and visited a lot of similar communities around the world, that sort of activity on a waterfront area is actually an attraction and adds value to the experience for everyone, as long as it's managed.
Done well.
So therefore, it's not a black and white now. I think I'd be quite happy for something to occur at Earnshaw Park. What that is, needs conversation. If it doesn't happen, I don't have a problem. If we need to find a better place, then that's fine.
Yeah, I think we need to find a better place. That's my position on that. I think that we will push it into such a small area that it will be so hard to manage that it's just not worth it.
I would rather take the approach of having managed event markets on given days.
Yes, and I would 100%.
And Peninsula Park, and I think, you look at, Salamanca Market in Tasmania is the one that really jumps out at me as an absolutely outstanding attraction, but it happens one day a week. or something.
Yeah, I would be totally for if there were 2 food night markets a week or something like that. I'd be open to that, but just not free for all the time.
Oh, it's an interesting concept thinking about in time because we think about it in space all the time, but maybe there are times of day when it's better and times of day when it's not.
But not every day. Like it's
What's the thing with every day? I'm just because the
I think one point on that is that we did want to stay out of getting into quite detailed around
Right.
the hours of trading and that's, we're looking for in principle guidance so that we can go investigate and come back to you.
Can I just
with
do the
detail.
principle of if it's okay on one day a week or 2 days a week to have a market, why is it not okay on the other days?
Exponentially more activity in the
No,
area.
but it's just is it because it's not about people movement, it's not about emergencies,
I think
it's
you can
what is it
manage,
about?
I think you can manage it because you can throw resources at it for one day to manage the impacts and whatever.
I
And advertising and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I agree, and this shouldn't be led by us. This should be like the craft market, organised by whoever wants to drive this. And I would be
Unless
happy
you're
to support
self-regulating that.
exactly. And so it's time limited, a couple of times a week, not something for us to manage, us for something to approve based on.
I'm just
So like the craft market, but it would only be a couple of times a week.
I think
That's the-
I think if I'm correct, the one at Pembroke Park in Wanaka, that they own a consent and a permit or something to operate the market. They sell stalls to all the market comers, but they're the ones that are responsible
Yeah.
for all the the damage to the
Okay,
grass.
so I guess that's,
The
we're
question is-
getting into,
It's operational.
Like,
I think if we just come back to that space in question, which is Earnshaw Park, and I think the only observation I'd like to put in is that it's incredibly heavily used in the summer. It is one of the few green spaces that is really in the middle of everything, and you go down there, whether that's families or kids or people sleeping or whatever, it's exceptionally popular
As are
as
the
a green
steps,
space.
as are the steps for people.
Yeah,
to go on as well.
yeah. Equally the same along Marine Parade by the lakefront there. So that's it, and it comes down to its competing use of the same space. So, which comes to the discussion is, are there other spaces?
And I think it's important to not view them as just the stall. I mean, I was down there the other day and one of the stalls had a queue of 12 people deep. So, the queuing is an obstruction as well. So.
Yeah, so, okay, so what I've got, just what we're hearing is that some form of scale, some scale of trading might be appropriate. So we
But
can,
not through the bylaw.
No.
That's, I think that this is my point. It's not us allowing it. It's like the craft market. It's a separate consented thing.
But wouldn't we have to have some sort of policy instrument to manage that? To
I don't think so. I
A reserve
don't think
management
so.
plan would enable the issue of
Yeah.
something that's a-
We need some for
Not, and it's something, but not, it doesn't have to necessarily be the bylaw. Because I think we need to be really clear
You can manage
that
your permit.
this is not whoever can turn up on,
No.
so that's why I don't think the bylaw is the right place to manage it. I think that as far as the bylaw, random trading in these areas has not worked.
why hasn't it worked? Is the question. That's because the bylaw
Because
actually
it's-
isn't adequate. So just throwing out
I
statements
think
like
it's
it hasn't
because,
worked.
I think it's because demand exceeds supply.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
because we had the registration system, not a permit system, we had both.
Right, because a bylaw could have numbers and places and a process of
It could have
applying for
response.
a non-tradable permit, which then could be managed by a collective. We wouldn't have to manage it directly other than enabling that to happen. And it could be done in a bylaw.
So we'll take all that
Doesn't-
feedback on board. And I think that what we haven't had the opportunity is to hear from the council about what your objectives you want for this area, what's okay. So this feedback is really useful, but it would be helpful to continue to get that at the scale we're at so that we can then come back to you and say, this model would look like this model would look like that, because if we keep getting into the detail on every single option, we're not going to be able to get
At this
feedback.
stage.
And I guess the thing is too, we've heard back from people who have a stake in this directly, the traders in the waterfront, but we haven't gone out to the community and said, well, what do you think about it?
I have. I've been
Yeah,
doing that.
but as the council hasn't, so.
And that's where there is some benefit to the
Yeah.
bylaw process
Yeah.
itself, that it encourages that, but then not everyone
We
engages.
could do a survey ahead of time, we could put something in.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole piece of policy work that the team can think about when they get the feedback from this forum, as to what the next steps are.
Because if the community says, hey, no, then that's an easy one for us. But if the community is split and there are good arguments for why they enjoy that space with those, with certain types of stalls, then,
So
like-
what we're saying is, given that we've had training in 3 areas, 2 areas that have a whole heap of issues, I think we should also look at other areas that might work, that may not have those issues, because, I think we'll get to that there could be some spaces that would allow that cluster effect of stalls in an area that would work for more people than it's working at the moment.
There needs to be foot traffic though.
Well,
So do you want to talk about those other alternate sites? Is that the next?
What's next?
Yeah.
Well, I was just wondering, do you want to hear from us what we want to see for the CBD in terms of training and that gives you the theme, I guess, for how.
Well, I
we
think
can-
maybe the next topic's then a good segue, because that gives us an idea if this is in line with what you agree
One
with,
of the outcomes.
then but if you have fundamental issues, this is the time to voice them.
So is that topic 2? Yeah, that's right. So these are outcomes that we have developed based on an overview of council's strategic direction and the feedback that we've received from the various stakeholders. So I guess it's leaning on those areas of agreement and disagreement, I suppose, in terms of trying to find a balance between those. And what we would want to do is test these with you to help guide our next steps for how we proceed and as well for your discussion. So open to. So there's 4 areas. 1 talks about the effective regulation. 2, how public space should be used. The approach for decision making, number 3, and number 4 is taking a solutions focused approach.
Nailed it.
Am I correct in thinking that that second one addresses accessibility in terms of unobstructed access for all users?
That's right, yeah. It would definitely fit.
I just wonder if that should be more explicit, because I think that's, for me, that's a primary outcome actually, is that the unobstructed access for all users is probably the most important single outcome. And then, you know, those things, being able to, you know, effectively regulate whatever occurs there, if it can be, you know, all those things become secondary, but yeah.
Great.
Hang on, sorry, then I want to chip in here.
I guess if I'm adding to that, then I would like to see equitable use, especially for commercial users that are renters on those spaces. And they are obviously at fixed premises, and pop-up stores and traders can set up a stall right outside their doorstep, and there's not much they can do about that. So that's certainly the feedback I've had loud and clear from the renters and landlords in the CBD in the last few weeks. And so that's what I'd like to see, is less of that conflict happening. So
this has been my issue all along, is equity. And those storefronts are being in the hospital industry, although quite far away. They're paying rent, they're paying insurance, they're fixed space. And effectively what you have out front, in an economic sense, is free riding, is hunter-gatherers. If it doesn't work here, you can move over here. And if I was a storefront owner or renter there, it's not equitable.
But if we read through the thing, the traders have asked to pay for the use of space.
So I guess my question was, what does cost neutral look like? So that in the first outcome, when we're talking about cost neutral, for who?
My only other point is that space is actually shrinking as we grow, as there are more tourists, as we double in size every 16 years. Every 16 years, that space halves. So we need more walkability. We need more accessibility, not less.
Thank you for that feedback. In terms of cost neutral, that was intended to try and demonstrate that there's obviously an administrative cost to processing potentially a more proactive framework. So
I think if there were areas, you'd have to create equity with the tables and chairs policy, for instance, because it's a similar use of public space, but it has a valuation assigned to it. It acknowledges, you know, that it's not a perfect use of a full use of public space, but it's so I think you'd have to apply some equity to the tables and chairs policy.
John, I was going to say that.
Yeah, I love the content of the details. I don't think most of these are actually outcomes. Only one of them is an outcome, which is maintain high quality public spaces. The others are mechanisms to achieving that outcome. So I think we need that distinction, particularly when we consult on it. And so Matt's identified another outcome, which is ensuring that the existing businesses' interests are at least taken into account, that's protected. But there's another one though that is providing for a vibrant, attractive and cohesive downtown area, which this sort of trading, if managed appropriately, can actually add to. So it's a balancing act. So they would be 3 outcomes, including the quality public space, which picks up on that safety issue. Then the others, other than maybe solutions focused, even then that's a process to achieving those outcomes. Does that make sense? Yeah. So otherwise, yeah, I like how you captured this. I think you've captured our previous discussions really well.
Just without making a judgment on either, Where does the food versus, trinkets and so on, how does that fit into that kind of framework of, for assessing what comes next?
Quality jewelry products.
So, yeah, I mean, well, there's a big difference. If you've got limited spaces,
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to do both well. There's no point having one person or two that get to sell, you know, pictures or jewelry, and then one, you know, one food cart if your space is limited. If you're trying to create a cohesive
Yeah.
something down there, which is, you know, sort of my thinking. You know, what would you put in that framework if you wanted to distinguish? Well, at what point do we make the decision? This is a food space, not a jewelry, not an upmarket. You know, that stuff sits in a market. There's only enough space for a food offering.
Is that something you have to come back to us on?
That sits
Well,
outside.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. But I think the answer also lies in this potential mechanism, which is why we have to come back to you, because obviously the legislative framework will determine the scope of things that we can and should be controlling.
Right. So
Yeah,
allow us
right.
to make that distinction or not?
It could do like, for example, a district plan approach, if it's a longer term thing, for
But a
example.
bylaw couldn't make that distinction.
Well, bylaw has got those health and safety, public nuisance, behaviour related.
Yeah.
Yeah.
rather than market.
But
Yeah,
it could work.
I think one of the, you know, putting those, whatever mechanisms used through the filter, you've got to sort of go, how effective can they be or have they been? And I think one of the problems we've had here, I've sort of proven that it's not very easy to regulate this year. So are we chasing something that's an impossible dream by trying to regulate something that has proven to be unregulatable?
All there were unregulatable rules that were proved to be unlawful. So I think
Well-
that's the context. So just
But-
let's imagine what it might have been like without those rules and with
But the
better
compliance,
permissions and
the
so on.
compliance was
Because we
incredibly,
had a massive number of registrations.
well, which goes back to my point,
It's not inherently
that
unregulatable.
demand outstrips supply because the ability to make those 50-metre separation or whatever
But if
was
it-
impossible, but and impossible to enforce because you don't know who was there first, there was all these
and permits, not
difficulties.
restrictions. You can, look, it's not
Okay,
inherently
I'm going to keep this
unregulatable.
moving. So hop on to the next slide, because I think we've given you some good feedback on those outcomes.
Yes, thank you for that. That's useful. So topic 3, so obviously we've progressed to this point at which maybe getting some guidance from you on what sites we should consider taking forward in terms of further investigation for short-term provision of trading. So we've obviously heard from you, there's some concerns about the mall on Beach Street. And I think I understand this part of the,
Right now.
Well, from some people, it's all of the lakefront.
sure.
Yeah.
So I don't think that, that's.
I think though, going forward, from some people, yes, but some people would also just like to see an option of the smaller piece of land, just because, I mean, I think if you were to show us what that would look like in a desirable way, keeping the high quality public space, I think it would be very hard to I think there wouldn't be many stalls on there personally, and I think you'd probably find that the cost outweighs, and I would be surprised if the stall holders would be able to afford what it would have to be cost neutral for us.
But we don't want to be cost neutral on this. We want to be charging for this.
No, but I mean, so we're cost neutral. Like in Wanaka, we charge, and it's quite a lot of money for those only 2 permits on the lakefront.
Cover the cost of administering it, which makes it neutral.
Yeah.
So what do you need scale?
Pardon?
So you're saying we need scale?
Yeah.
Well, it would just be interesting if we got that information and it goes, oh, it's going to be $20,000 and there's only 3 stall holders, but that's the option because that's the guidance we've given. Is that
That would be a bargain if you're comparing it with Vancouver or Lakefront and Papeete.
The point is it'd be objectively valued.
yes?
What is the value of the use of this space? Which would
Give
be
us
And how many
Which
is
is a-
appropriate?
which is
to be
a
still used?
capital thing.
Okay, so I think that's a good point. If we end up with a restricted space, then we need to think about the costs of any of the restricted space. Yeah. So I think we've had a comment about those three red areas, and
So, yeah, the next slide here is the site that is just over here away from us, corner of Chicago Street, Henley Street. Yes. So it's a green space that is not reserved, and so therefore it doesn't have Reserve Act / Reserve National Plan restrictions on it, which are difficult to overcome with the other reserve effectively, apart from mental park potentially. And it is in quite a unique location in terms of these potential access related things that we have to work through.
but there's a car park immediately next door to it, right?
Yeah.
Get some foot traffic.
I mean,
Trees.
Bus stops.
No fences in there anymore.
apart from that, we,
Bus
yeah,
stops, good point.
having somebody there with stop all our election signs being kicked over.
Or they'll pick them
Don't
over
pick them
even
up.
more.
No, I mean, a couple of months, well, more than a couple of months ago, I did go around and have a look at some of these sites, and I think this is a really good one that could be used to activate a space.
Yeah.
There is a large amount of foot traffic in that area. Certainly now there's a car park built right next to it, and it's not directly competing with other businesses on the doorstep.
Or other uses.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's nice amenity, you could string up lights like they do in Brownston
And
Street.
there's enough space there, you could probably get 15 booth stalls,
My-
15 on there.
My only concern is that you trample the grass
Yeah.
quickly, and so you end up just destroying the space for but look, I'm not opposed. I think this is one where there isn't a conflict in use. I just, I just am worried that you just destroy it, leave it with more than, the occasional use.
You'd have to take to that cost and if you needed to do something with it, yeah.
Could I just, I'll come to you in a second, John. And it's really hard to see on that photo, the left-hand photo there with the blue shaded area, but when you actually go to that site and you actually walk along from that site towards the bus stop, there's actually quite a significant amount of space between the pavement and the car park, which is dead space. Now, I'm not sure what its status is, but there is actually, again, you could put a significant number of stalls on there, and they wouldn't be on the car park, and they wouldn't be on the pavement, and it sort of links up to that space. But that would probably depend on what the status of that area is. But you can just about see it on the photograph.
I reckon, I don't know, I don't think there is much space here, John. You
Have a
look at
wander.
the photograph.
700 square meters.
Like if you had a queue of people, even a couple of people that would block the footpath.
Depending how.
Anyway,
Okay.
it's a good area.
So,
I think this site used to be this little caretaker's house on that, so we go back far enough, but,
is it serviced? So is there water, wastewater, electricity on site?
These are stallholders that don't require any of that stuff.
Yeah, but if you have a look at what particularly food stall holders do, it would be beneficial if some of them did, because otherwise it's actually difficult
Which
to
is-
manage.
These
Takes
these
away the food
these
first.
food caravan parks that there's 2 or 3 in Wanaka now, the 3 in fact in Wanaka now that are on private land where they are providing
Yeah,
temporary connection
exactly.
services.
So is that something you look at?
I have,
Okay.
I'm not aware of it.
Thank you.
Sorry, but we will.
Yeah, thanks. I think just something worth thinking about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that.
Oh, yeah, no, I support this area. That's what you were looking for. Sounds great.
How many square meters does the average stall require?
2 by 2 is the bylaw, what the bylaw says.
That's the
Fit
point.
with
If
it.
it's towable, it's going to be like 2 by 5 at most, or 2 by
But we're not
7.
talking about towable, we're not talking about caravans, we're talking about mobile,
Little carts and things.
yeah.
So I mean, that is what I guess my sort of answer would be to you on that is that I think when you take a site by site approach potentially at looking at what's best for this, and do we go so far as for the site, for example, each site, and do we create a black and white approach for how many, like a cap, or do we introduce restrictions for each trader? there's different approaches that we could take that.
I mean, I think the only way, going to Nikki's point, the only way you can manage this is if you have squares on the ground, which you have permission to use that square for that period of time. And, you know, if you're moving forward at all on this, you need to be really specific that you're selling this piece of ground for this period of time. And right down to even painting it on the ground, quite frankly, because otherwise we're just going back into the same old regulatory problems.
And this site might, I mean, could there be some more semi-permanent? I mean, if you think about people coming and going, maybe it's better for this site to have actual caravans or little mini carts that are permanent, that don't come in and out on a daily
I was
basis.
just going to say, we've got places that people can do that. So and this is a tiny bit of green space that we have to preserve.
It's just,
You're not going to say about the trees, so we need to leave the trees there. So it has to operate, in my opinion, within the bounds of what it is there. So I don't think we could be going further. There is plenty of opportunity for traded.
we just have to
food
think
stores
about
in our.
access, because how are they getting in and out? But potentially through the car park, to take down the fence, and you'd
I
have to
think
make
the fence is
safe.
taken down already, isn't
Oh,
it? Yeah.
Okay.
How many traders are we talking about? Plus or minus?
An unknown number.
It's an unknown number, but I think it got up to about 120, was it?
Oh,
It's on the,
70 something.
you're talking
Because
about
this site would only accommodate about 25.
this, you're talking about these, what's happening currently?
No, the shuttle Stanley Street.
Well, I mean, we need to do further work.
It's 650 square meters and I'm figuring 5 by 5.
No, 2 by 2.
Yeah, 2 by 2, but I'm expanding it.
Right.
All right,
Okay.
2 by 2, fine. You can
I,
go-
I, I
you
think,
can
I
go
think, I
150.
think we've heard general support for this area.
To investigate, yeah.
Right, but just to clarify that point, 2 by 2 is only the area that they cover essentially.
Yeah, you need to allow space.
They need at least 5 times that to have the number of people lined up, you know, so.
Great, thank you for that feedback, it's all really useful. So this next site, 5 here, is in the Village Green, it's road reserve. So it's this southern here, yeah. Oops.
I like this area too.
yeah, the only thing, sorry, is,
You go.
the only thing on this side is you've got restaurateurs facing that space, quite the other in fact. So that's basically the same situation we have in the mall.
Just charge appropriately.
I mean, I'm not completely, no, but I do, people use this space really well, and particularly in the summer, they spread out and sit down and enjoy their lunch and stuff like that. So you'd have to be careful. And you know, that is the access way, that's got the first step to, of many down to the bottom. So you want to make sure that there was a clear, you can only use part of it because you need part of it for access. Notwithstanding that people with disabilities couldn't access this space because it steps. So, you know, the businesses would be limited by that.
Have you spoken to the cafes immediately adjacent?
No, yeah. But by immediately adjacent, there are none immediately adjacent. Well, I mean,
Across the road.
other side of the road, other side, that's adjacent to me, so.
I think
adjacent.
It'd be great. I mean, we'll go, they can buy something and eat lunch.
Yeah, there's quite a few, and
Go to water.
someone might be quite keen, I don't know.
Quick question. So if we go to the other side of the creek, sorry, southern side, not sure if it's southern side. But if we were looking down, the other bit of green space.
Yeah.
Where the buses,
Sorry?
where the buses are.
Yeah, where the bus stop. No. So
It's in with the bus in the photo.
Yeah,
It's Camp,
Yeah.
Camp Street, isn't it?
is that reserved?
the
So
group,
is that-
yeah.
Is that problematic for this? Because again, that is often not used. Whereas people in the green area, with steps, that's where they'll hang out. But you would very, very rarely see anyone picnicking on that top tier, as it were. Again, that's from a footfall and a bit more space is pretty good. So but the barrier to that is the reserve.
Yeah, that's why this bit here is quite unique. in that
Yeah,
it's part of
road
the
reserve.
Yeah. But I mean, there is road reserve on the other side as well. It's just that it's part of the footpath.
Does the road reserve end of that footpath, or does it potentially go?
Well, my understanding is that the green space is the extent of the reserve and that then it's road reserve. But yeah, we can take
That might be that. Yeah,
sure it's the case.
yeah. Because again, you're not directly in the face of much on the other side of the road.
Well, there are, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, what would happen to the grass is the only question. Does
Yeah.
that matter? Is
Well,
the other question.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the two, the paved one makes so much more
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, well,
And I actually think people would use the green space on the other side more than the paved space. Because they get their McDonald's and they sit and they eat there, and if there's food to it, then more choice.
Yes, and the
there's some
safety
business that could be quite a nice lunch spot, probably.
could be, yeah, and it could be, it could potentially be complementary to the other business. The safety issue too, beside a relatively quiet side street compared with one of their busiest streets in town. That's a factor, right?
Okay. I'll open the line.
Thank you for that feedback. It's all really useful. Appreciate it. So yes, this last topic here, I guess we're just sort of not really wanting to take a deep dive necessarily into sort of like all of the specific mechanisms or sort of dollar values of how this might work, because as you probably can imagine, there's quite a lot that we need to work through there. But we are wanting to get some early guidance from you on if you think we should focus on this pathway 1 or pathway 2 in terms of charging. And just briefly, so pathway 1 is just looking at processing fees for the likes of registrations or permits, whatever sort of approval it ends up needing to be, which would be limited to those administration sort of aspects, or bank potentially monitoring enforcement. And then this pathway 2 is the wider scope, which talks about pathway 1, but in addition to that, charging for the occupation of public spaces, sort of, I suppose, not dissimilar to the dining policy.
Pathway to
Does our-
Pathway 2 for
does
me.
our pricing, does our policy not sort of cover this off in terms of use of public places anyway, regardless of the law?
So there is some commentary in the community facilities funding policy, I think, but it relates to the use of reserves.
So that's not the reserves, not these other public
Yeah.
places.
So, yeah, there is that context there. There's obviously the outdoor dining context as well. So, we've sort of got things around the fringes, but not necessarily anything targeted to the activity.
Tension in that community funding and finance policy is it says maximum return, right? That's been problematic in the past, because we could go for maximum return and have nothing but Louis Vuitton carts up there, where I don't think that's necessarily an outcome that the council would support. But if we're, it's the balance.
Yeah, and equally, I think we've got an obligation to get fair return on these public lands. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the key to it, and this is what the stallholders have asked for as well, is an equitable payment solution where they're happy to pay more, but then that has to come with some reassurance.
Yeah, yeah.
And, they've got their space for a certain amount of time, whatever. But I think in terms of equity, we need to make sure that's commercially, it's equitable with the other commercial operators, whether that's renting a space or that's a stallholder. I think they need to have a fair and even playing field. So if the bar's a little bit higher for you to be able to have a pop-up store, then that eliminates a lot of those stallholders already. Certainly eliminates the ones that from out of town, and more serious local ones that actually are good operators. This gives them some assurance.
As I said, I think that the tables and chairs approach is actually quite sound, because what it does, it values the land based on, commercial. It devalues it based on the fact that you can't use it probably as when it's raining. You can't use it, at night potentially. There's limitations on the hours of operation, and that you can't, do full commercial activity. So probably to about 40% of or 50% of the commercial footprint value, which I think is quite a fair approach, and it's quite measured because it's done by independent valuers. It's there's not too much room for messing up.
I'd like to query Matt because I agree with you, but I'm just trying to figure out how to get there. And that is, if I am one of the restaurant owners who's paying rates, rent, charges, insurance, and all of a sudden there's a stall across from me that's selling gyoza or oysters or something like that, they're directly competing with me. So how do we, and frankly, if I was sitting there, I might decide that I would take on counsel. How do we deal with that?
So that's why we're going to be really careful about the site locations here. That's why you keep bringing it back to, if you're going to create a space that's right next to a restaurant that's already in existence, be very careful because those emails are going to flood into you, complaining about why council's made a decision to be anti-competitive. So just be very careful about the site selection because it has unintended consequences. Everything's a trade.
Because
There's the principle in there around not supplying something in direct competition with, I don't know if you can go there.
Potentially, or a distance
Yeah,
from.
what the type of offering that's, you know,
Potentially, yeah.
I don't know.
This is not really part of any of these things that you've been asking for, but this is something that I've kind of given a bit of thought to as to part of the problems. And it actually came up also in the engagement feedback by the stakeholder groups in terms of the trader stakeholders. And it's to do with the waste management and it's the second part, design and appearance. So I would actually also like to see in any changes that there are some requirements, that it's just not a free-for-all for what stalls look like, even if we're going into these other places, that we are managing this as part of our town centre vibe, if we want to call it. But to me, that's also something, I know it's not part of the decisions, but I do just want to provide my feedback that I do think that that's something I would like to see brought in.
And that's heavily covered off in the tables and chairs policy, right?
Yep.
On the mall, they can only have certain types of umbrellas, so it's that equity thing. The other thing, and I'm not sure how we deal with this, but footfall and the visiting population here, it's because we got a destination marketing organisation that does a very, very good job at attracting visitors, and that's paid for by all our commercial ratepayers. They do not have a choice. Right, so if you're a commercial ratepayer, you are rated without any choice to pay destination Queenstown to bring these people here, which is then supplying the customers for a lot of these, not all the customers, but a significant portion of the customers. So one of the things that's been raised with me quite frequently is, you know, and it's this, how are some of these other stores contributing towards that? Right. Now that's just something else to think about because we won't resolve that today. But it's that equity, it is that equity issue.
Well,
Yeah.
does that
So-
continue into the future of things?
In Wanaka, because it's on a rateable land, they're paying it and then that is contributed in
Yes,
the stallholder fee. So they are actually.
On the private ones, yeah.
But that's what we would have to, if that
Yeah.
was, we were acting like a private thing.
Yeah. Like a store in the CBD is paying 10 grand to DQ
Hmm.
in marketing rates. So and that's just built into your rates. You can't get out of it.
Yeah.
So there's an equity piece there.
But there's an element here in a very finite space that's getting smaller, that we're just shifting a problem around. We just keep moving it. And
Or it's an
hoping that it will
opportunity.
diminish a little bit until we have to move it again.
It's not, it's difficult to see as a problem, like risks and opportunities. We can do this in a way that delivers some really great things. And if we do it in the right spot, the right amount, the right look, the right conditions, we need to stop closing our minds to the fact that this could be a really good opportunity for them. Just if we do it well.
Yeah, Quentin, John.
Just on one of these slides there, you've got the little areas in Wanaka, and I know these are and Arrowtown. I just wanted to comment on them and that, look, we get the odd person selling books there and it's not that big a deal yet. But I just want to highlight that those green areas include a lot of thoroughfares and footpaths and, you know, adjacent to crossing points, and there's an information board there, which obviously people need to be able to walk around to access and stuff. So I think going back to the previous point, you would need to be much clearer around which little bit of land that you're talking about. And I mean, once again, tables and chairs license, they have little silver discs on the ground that are pretty unobtrusive. You could actually mark out the specific sites with the little silver discs or whatever it is in order to, or draw a line on the ground or whatever, to be really clear about that those things are being considered already, that you're not interrupting footpaths, you're not interrupting access to information and bins and whatever else it is. So, yeah, just wanted to reinforce that, because as the demand increases, those things become more and more under pressure, and if you can get on top of it early, it helps.
Cool. John?
Yeah, so looking at the activities that you now, particularly the food stalls that generally have no permits showing at all. They have nothing displaying whether they're meeting the food safety regulations and whether the people there are qualified to do so. Generally speaking, they may have them underneath, I don't know, they're not on display. So if there were food stalls included in this, then I would think those sort of, that's an equity thing too. The other businesses have to do that. They should be able to do that. But also in most parts of the world where this, including other parts of New Zealand, where there's stallholders like this that are permitted, that permit has to be on display. If it's not on display, it's really easily enforced and often fined. So that helps fund it as well, because those who shouldn't be there pay the price. And then finally, you could build in a DQ levy, assuming that continues in the future, within the permit cost anyway on an annual basis. So, you know, I think we could, that's all about how you manage it effectively, make it easy to manage so it can be reported as well, even if someone's not out there actively doing so, and then covering off all those other costs that other businesses are having to meet. I don't think enabling this sort of stuff is anti-competitive. It's actually enabling competition that others don't want.
As long as it's a fair playing field.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, that's.
I think for the people who are listening to this conversation, it's really good that nobody's saying this shouldn't be an activity that happens in this town. So I think it is about managing the opportunity and doing that well. Gavin, you haven't said anything. Oh, there must be something. the exciting topic of speed management next. So I think that the prohibitions we put in place around the streets in Queenstown and the lakefront should remain, because it wasn't sustainable what was going on in those areas, or in some instances still is. I mean, I am open to considering other sites in Queenstown. I'm also mindful of Village Greenwood being close proximity to other trading food businesses, and that the problem that may cause. There are limited spaces. I'm not entirely sold on the Stanley Street one as a place where I want to eat, but people might be. I think in terms of charging for it, I do see there's a place for, if we've got a set aside area like the one out here, that there is, you need a permit to operate in it, and it might be an annual permit that you pay a fee for, a fee that covers the processing of it and a fee for the privilege of having it or for using the space. I think it'd be relatively easy if you've got a finite area that's 20 metres by 33 metres, whatever it is, that doesn't necessarily need to be marked out. It could be identified how many can fit in there, and that's how many permits you issue, no more. So it's up to the people using it where they fit on that space. So we don't need to mark it out with paint or pegs or whatever. But I think this is just moving an issue around, and it's whack-a-mole. It's going to pop up. Something else is going to pop up no matter what we do, I think. But I do think we need to, that's the way that obviously we've managed it, is identifying an area. If we are going to identify an area, have a limited number of permits for that area and charging for it.
I'll just make an observation too. Strategically speaking, this is currently the only, we're talking about the waterfront, the only readily accessible waterfront area for the whole Wakatipu to some extent. But in future, there will be a whole lot more. So we need to have a policy, particularly when there's a harbour at Homestead Bay, when the Kingston waterfront is much more developed than it is now. So, and some of that won't be far away if some people have their way. So it would be useful to perhaps have a good policy that looks at the bigger picture too.
Yes, and I suppose that's sort of a good segue for these long-term options that aren't obviously subject to what we've talked about today, but we will what the next steps are, in particular to work with the guidance that you've given us today. And it's been really helpful. Thank you. We'll take a deeper dive into those sites. We will have a look at that matrix scale question, like what you talked about in terms of identifying, you know, where there should be a cap, etc. That's good. We'll look into that. Look closer at this charging approach. There's some technical work needs to go on there, and work on those long-term options as well. So before the end of the year, what our intention is to come back to you with this short-term package for your consideration and approval, hopefully, and then workshop on these long-term options to get some further guidance on that. So yeah, I have missed a few slides there just quickly because I think we've got what we need. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll just make one observation. We're looking forward, and it's good Penny's here in this case, that with district plan, if the planning bill comes to fruition, things like some people raised here about appearance, if it's taking district plan approach, will not be able to be considered because the current approach is anyone can do what they want, essentially.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
On
Your own
their
land,
land.
but it's our land.
Oh, it's going to say the landowner, right? So nothing.
So- And it's our land.
No, it's not the RMA.
Okay, I think that's a rabbit hole that we're
Yeah.
not going to solve today. Thank you. Really good discussion. Thank you, councillors, and look forward to seeing this progress. There's obviously been a process, there's been consultation, there's been some feedback. We've now got some information in front of us, seeking some direction. So happy to pass that end of the table.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Oh, look, it's great to be here. I think this has been a very long process. I think we're looking forward to, getting an approved speed management plan. So, and at this point in the audience is. But look, we've got quite a lot to get through today. We're quite keen. Really, the point of today is to give you the feedback from the consultation, an overview of the public consultation. We'd like to go through some of the items, particular items in the speed management plan, talk through some of the logic, talk through the recommendations, and really just have an opportunity to get some confidence in the plan. So this is coming to the 28th of August council meeting. So just to get confidence to take that paper through so that we can then submit the plan to the Director of Transport. And, there's quite a few speed limits on the road that we would like to make sure are just really clear and legalised as well. So moving on, just a reminder of why we do speed management. It's not the most exciting topic, I think, from a lot of people, as we see from a lack of the audience. But it's a really important lever that we have around road safety and risk reduction. And I acknowledge, I guess sometimes we can be quite fervent about the importance of having safe roads. And it's a really, it's a lever that we know we have financially constrained times. Like this is one of the levers we can pull to make our roads safer. We have in our risk register, there's a tier 1 risk that says that we want to keep the public safe and a risk that we want to keep members of the public, members of our organisation safe. There's a tier 2 risk, which talks about death and serious injury on the local road network. This is also a Department of Internal Affairs measure. These are things that we do have an important role to play in keeping people safe on a network. And this is what this is about. This is a low cost solution to a risk that we have. And we want it to be manageable. We're aware, and I think if we just flick to the next slide, we have a vision that we want to keep people safe, we want to keep our vulnerable users safe, those school zones. We do aim to get consistent speeds on the network. I know that's not something that we always manage to get across the line, but it is certainly a goal. But we do want people to be able to move effectively and efficiently around the network in a safe manner. So I think that's just a really quick reminder of why we're here. Adrian is going to talk through the engagement process and consultation feedback, and then Xing Hao will take us through the technical aspects of some of the specific speed limits. So, I'll hand over to Adrian now to talk about the consultation.
Perfect, cool, thank you. Yeah, so consultation overview. So we held consultation for a little bit over 6 weeks. We had an online survey and we also took submissions via the Let's Talk email. We consulted on 76 proposed speed changes. 53 of those were in the Wakatipu and 23 in the Upper Clutha. And through the online survey, submitters could select and provide feedback on individual proposed speeds, meaning that we got really valuable information from that process. So altogether, we had 318 people who submitted, and that amounted to 749 pieces of individual feedback on the proposed speeds. So taken together, the volume and detail of these responses demonstrate that the speed management is a topic of significance to residents, road users, and community groups. So these graphs here, they represent data from the online survey submissions. We had 247 of those. The main, well, quite interesting thing to note for these is that a third of all the submissions came from people who don't actually live in the district. Of the submitters who do live locally, the greatest representation came from Wanaka, with 14% of submissions, closely followed by 12% of submissions from people in Glenorchy, and Lake Hawea was also quite responsive with 9% of submissions. And these three areas together reflect the areas of highest public concern. So the second graph, one on the right there, shows that 13% of the responses on the individual road or the speed areas came from people who directly live on these roads, in comparison to a high number of responses which come from people using the roads either daily, multiple times a week, or occasionally. So understanding where the submitters live and their usage of the roads with proposed speed changes was used in our detailed analysis, with high weighting given to those who lived along the roads rather than those just commuting through. Thank you. So when submitting feedback against an individual road, we asked how the submitter travelled along that road. So this graph shows an overwhelmingly high usage of the private car, with 71% of submissions coming from people who predominantly drove a private vehicle on the selected road. The next highest proportions were commercial vehicles at 10% and bikes or e-bikes at 9%. Through the consultation process, we engaged with representatives from police and fire and emergency NZ to understand the risks and challenges they face whilst responding to calls on the transport network. Both agencies highlighted that lower speeds reduce the impact and severity of crashes, with their key focus being around preventing crashes and minimising harm. They did also note that communities tend to adapt to speed changes over time. Community associations were also contacted about consultation, as well as some local businesses who had previously indicated an interest in speed management. Schools have been consulted on through the alternate method, which was the plan for managing speed in school zones, which we presented previously. Cool. So several key themes emerged from the feedback that we received. Driver behaviour was widely seen as a greater safety risk than speed. Many respondents who preferred to keep the current speed limits argued that unsafe driving behaviours such as travelling under the speed limit, not pulling over to let traffic pass, erratic driving, inattention and poor driving skills are more of a concern than speed. There were many, many references to tourists, but it does also need to be noted that locals were also called up for poor driving as well. Those who support speed reductions stated that lower speed limits could help mitigate the issues by narrowing speed differentials and providing greater reaction time. For active mode users, they strongly support reduced speeds. So among those who identified biking or e-biking as their primary mode of transport, 91% of them supported lower speeds. A similar pattern was observed for walkers, where 89% preferred reduced speeds, and we also got a lot of feedback from the horse riding community for lower speed limits on roads that they commonly use, such as morning. Residents are a lot more likely to support speed reductions than those who pass through. So across all the roads, support for reduced speeds was highest among respondents living on or adjacent to a road, which was about 73%. So this pattern was consistent across several road sections and reflected in the road-specific feedback, where residents frequently raised safety concerns regarding the existing speed limits. And perceived impacts on travel times. So for tradies, the perceived impact from travel time was a dominant concern, with 71% of them preferring no change to current speed limits, believing that the reduced limits would add time to working days in a way that directly affects their productivity and income. However, for those travelling in commercial vehicles, such as taxis and delivery vehicles, views differed, with 66% supporting the reductions, kind of suggesting that for some working drivers, the perceived travel time impact was considered acceptable relative to the safety benefits, or that the nature of their work makes them less sensitive to marginal changes in journey time.
I guess with your meters ticking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Money the other way. Can I ask a question here? So you got targeted stakeholders, police, means and schools. Did you talk to GoBus?
Bus operators?
Not directly, no. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah, cool. So this table outlines some high-level numbers for the submissions against individual roads or speed areas. So when analysing of submissions, each submission was identified as either supporting or opposing the proposal, or in support of a speed reduction, but perhaps suggesting a higher or lower speed instead. If a submission misunderstood what was being proposed, or if it was on something not included in our speed management plan, such as state highways, then it was marked as out of scope. So overall, this shows that 65% of the submissions were supportive of our proposed speeds. That's kind of all we've got for the consultation engagement side of things. So we can take questions now before going to the technical data.
Great. Of the 99 who wanted a higher speed than proposed but lower than the current speed, where were those? Can you give us a bit more of a breakdown? And I'm specifically interested in the Glenorchy Road from Chetway to Bob's Cove.
Yeah, we got detailed analysis in the coming slides.
Oh,
The numbers.
I didn't see that.
So I think if we're talking about a specific road, it might be, we've talked about the pros, the fors and against.
I've actually read all of the slides and I didn't pick that up, but just, I might have been, but yeah.
The very next slide, just go up.
Sorry, guys.
We did attach the technical note as well, and that gives every single road, and it will tell you.
What speed were they asking for? So if they wanted a decreased speed limit, what was the comments on the Glenorchy Road? If they were wanting a reduced, were they asking? I guess what I'm asking is, were they in favour of 90? Was that kind of?
I can double check.
There was only two people on that. There was only 2 people that wanted a lower speed limit on that Glenorchy to Queenstown Road.
We have got that.
It's only Sunshine to Wilson Bay.
No, there's not. What's a decrease higher than proposed Waiuna Station to GY 4, Bob's Cove 9?
But perhaps we go.
Come to the detailed analysis.
Yeah.
It's only for those settlements. The open road answer is no one. Carry on.
Right, okay.
Well, so first, I guess, were there any other questions around the consultation before we jump into this more technical, like targeted?
Yes, just one. And maybe a tidying engineer somewhere and see what portion of your respondents were tradies. You said trades vehicles, but you didn't say how many, what proportion were tradies, because they wanted higher speed limits.
I don't know.
Was it fit? I mean, and if you want to just ballpark it, 50%, 20%, 30%?
I don't think it was that high, no.
So there's 3%.
3%.
3% were tradies,
Yeah.
not trade vehicle, tradies.
Yeah.
That says trade vehicle. Never mind.
Yeah.
I want
Because
to
when
say-
we asked people what's the primary mode of transport, we didn't ask them for their occupation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Did the survey specifically trigger anyone to think about a higher than what was proposed but lower than current? So
we do
for the
have-
Glenorchy one, I'm just trying to figure it out because obviously there's so many opposed to it, but nobody ticked 90. Was there a box where you could say, I would prefer 90?
Generally, people add that into the comment. So, for example, if we do propose 80 and they prefer a speed limit lower than the current but higher than the proposed, then automatically that's only 90 kilometers per hour left in the option. And some people do mention from memory along the cemetery roads in Lake Havia, people mentioned about 60 kilometers per hour instead of 50 in our proposal. We covered those comments in my when we talk about those analysis. Any more questions in the presentation? Okay, cool. And just moving to the detailed feedback we received, there were 4 proposed 60 kilometers per hour sections along Glenorchy Queenstown Road, covering the settlement areas, where has roadside activity and interaction between the different road users. Overall, we received a strong support from lowering the speed limit, especially from the local residents. Many highlighted the concerns about the safety for pedestrians, cyclists, children, pets, and visitors. using those areas. The 1 mile to Sunshine Bay section received some opposition. However, considering the upcoming safety improvements at the intersection for pedestrian crossings and the upcoming development within the area, we'd like to keep our original proposal for this section. And the consultation feedback showed that the local community does recognize the benefits of lowering the speed limit through those settlements area. So in the table, we have listed the number of people who support this proposed speed limit, who wants to have a lower limit than the proposed, and people who wants to have a decrease but higher than proposed, but lower than the current limit, and people who has against the proposed speed limit, and also the total number of submissions that we have received through those sections. Do we have any questions?
Presumably the, well, assuming that all of the people that responded covered all of these sections, maybe they didn't, but the 12 that opposed the 1 mile Sunshine Bay section might also be the people that opposed the Wilson's Bay, the 3 that opposed that one, and the 2 for Bob's Cove and the 4 for Waina are all in that same, potentially in that same 12. So it doesn't add up to the total number of all those that opposed each of those sections, does it?
I think it's
There's a bit
really
of
worth,
overlap.
it's worth really noting, like, as with any consultation feedback that we provide you on any topic, this is not a poll.
Yeah.
So it will help shape your thinking, but ultimately, you know, it's a small sample of people that felt strongly about it.
And the only other thing I was going to mention to keep in mind is that already this morning there's been a bus small later.
Yeah.
I think it was near.
It was on the Araha corner.
Yeah. And there was another car off the road as well, I think on their way there, they saw another car off the road and pushed it. Slippery, but
That's
the road that people aren't used to necessarily.
Just for my clarification, most of the crashes, are they between Bob's Cove and Waina Station?
Sorry.
Are most of the crashes between Bob's Cove and Waina Station?
We actually had crashes along the entire route. It's not only between the the proposed 80k sections. We do have crashes actually happened on those 60k sections as well.
And I guess the standout for me is the opposition is 57 for Bob's Cove to Waina Station, which seems to be quite a bit higher than any other area of that road. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to that in terms of what you think the reason is for that, other than, well, there's no residents in between that stretch, right? As opposed to all the other sections where there are houses and buildings.
Yeah, okay. Right, just moving to the proposed 80.
Yeah, but I think the question is for the 80 section, not the, I think which one was on this page 2.
Yep.
So do you want from us, are we comfortable with keeping them as proposed? Is that what you're kind of, the guidance that you want today?
Yeah, definitely.
So this page, I'm happy.
Yeah, so that's the page, the 60 section.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's just me, I was waiting for other people to say.
But this is coming back to council.
Yes, yeah, but you kind of want to know what to put in the paper.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's a bit of guidance, right? Yeah.
Well, specifically for 1 mile to Sunshine Bay, I absolutely agree with that, because looking at the Sunshine Bay Reserve upgrade that the community is planning, they're going to be crossing over that road to the, so yeah, it needs to be very slow.
Yeah, these are all sensible, I think.
Yeah, agreed.
And moving to the proposed 80 sections. So those sections generated the highest level feedback, especially the Bob's Cove to Waina Station section. The feedback was more mixed. The main concern raised was the additional travel time got impacted by the change, and we will talk about the additional travel time in the next slide to show our analysis on that.
Many submitters also felt that the tourist driver behavior and the road conditions are the main safety issues rather than the speed limit itself. However, there are also support from for reducing the speeds because of the road environment, the roadside access, and the number of recreational users using along those routes. Can I just finish my following slides and we can come back to the conversation on this one. And so this graph shows how we assess the travel time delay for the changes. The pink lines represent the current speed environment, including the existing posted speed limit, the current 85th percentile and 50th percentile operating speed. The purple line shows the proposed speed limits, while the green line shows the model's 85th and 50th percentile operating speed once the new speed limits are introduced. You'll notice that the current 85th percentile operating speed varies very often along the corridor. This represents the fast drivers who may accelerate to around 90 kilometers per hour on very short straight sections, then have to slow down again due to the curves or other road strengths. Comparing with the current percentile operating speed, it remains much more consistent throughout the route. This shows that most drivers are already traveling at speeds that are influenced by the road environment rather than simply the posted speed limit. Overall, the model indicates that the posted speed limits better align with how the road is naturally driven and will create a more consistent road speed environment. For the fast traveler on the road, their travel time will increase just less than 3 minutes through the entire route between Queenstown and Glenorchy. People who travel at the average operating speed now won't notice much of a difference on their travel. In other words, the proposed limits better reflects the actual operating speed drivers experience today, while providing a safer and more consistent speed environment. And that's why we would like to suggest keeping the proposed speed limits throughout the entire route. Yeah, and just kind of give an overall rationale for this decision. So when developing our final recommendations, we considered both the technical evidence and the consultation feedback. From a technical perspective, the corridor already has an average operating speed of 80 kilometers per hour. The road has very popular tourist destinations, school bus movements, and a crash history that supports lower speeds. During the consultation, many people suggested improvements such as better road maintenance, more passing opportunities, and addressing the tourist driving behavior. Those are very valuable suggestions and should be continued to be explored. However, they don't remove the increased crash severity associated with the higher traveling speed. So our recommendations balance the public feedback with the evidence-based road safety principles. And again, we'd like to remit our original proposal for this corridor. And we had used the same rationale for the other speed limit changes in the speed limit plan. Yeah.
So can I just clarify? So you're suggesting or putting forward that it stays at 80?
Yeah,
For the three.
No, it stays at 80 from the proposed.
Yeah, so, oh, okay, so.
Yeah, so essentially dropping it.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I have an issue with that, given we had so many people oppose it, and the whole point, and I get it, I totally get all the technical reasons, it's not that I don't support those, and this has been a long process. I feel like we've done this a lot. And the whole point of going out for consultation was to say, look, we actually don't really know. Sorry, not technically, we know technically, but in terms of making the decision as politicians or leaders, we said, let's go out and see what people want. And to me, this does say they want to keep it at 100. It's my opinion, not necessarily what I personally think. But yeah.
Gavin, that's not a poll.
No, it's not a
But,
poll.
the reasons that people don't want to reduce the speed limit don't necessarily marry up with the facts of what happens when you do. And, saying, well, I'm going to lose productivity by missing out on 3 minutes of my trip, or my trip taking 3 minutes longer, isn't a valid argument compared to the safety benefits from reducing the speed limit by a small amount that people aren't achieving most of the time anyway. Particularly for me, this graph, because this has been through our committee, to see that only the top 15% are getting up to 100 maybe, and possibly some of those are going over 100 anyway because they are just fast drivers, way better than the rest of us. But most people aren't going above that reduced speed limit anyway.
No, I know they're not, but that's why I don't know.
And the 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes, it's not significant when you look at the safety benefits. And all it's going to do coming to Queenstown is get you to the end of the queue, getting to Franklin 3 minutes. If you're going to the north, when you go back in time anyways. You're gaining because you go back in time. Okay.
Hillbillies.
Okay, folks.
Just asking one question around the graph focused on the North Queenstown Road graph. Yeah, that one there. So the last third of the section to Glenorchy, just wondering whether a lot of the people that were opposed to the proposal to drop to 80, we asked about Bob's Cove, but where does Bob's Cove start? It's the end of the first third. And I'm wondering whether the concern for Glenorchy residents, I'm assuming it's who opposed it, but whether their concerns start at, was it 25,000 metres? Where they go above the 80k for most of the way through.
At Mount Croton Station.
Yeah, or is it Rat Point? Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so, was there ever any thought to go, maybe we make that a higher speed limit there, but back to 80 up until that point?
Yeah, we did consider that option as well, but because it will create another inconsistent speed on our network, so we don't really recommend to increase.
Most people are used to changing speeds. That's what the signs are for, I guess. What your GPS that tells you, it's changed to 100 k's now. So there's inconsistencies throughout the district and throughout the country. You change from 50 to 60 to 70 to 100. So, or even 80. I missed that one as well. So there is a whole heap of inconsistencies. So I'm just wondering whether there is a balance here where 80 k's to Rat Point or wherever that point is, and then from there on in, it looks like you could go a little bit easier on the gas.
Anna from Happy can give a bit more.
Great.
Thanks, Anna.
Hello, hello everyone. Great discussion so far. I'm glad to be able to join you for this. So to briefly introduce myself, I'm Anna Bray-Sharpen. I'm a principal advisor in transportation for Abley Consulting Limited. I've been with Abley for 2 years, and prior to that I was in NZTA Waka Kotahi for 4 years, managing the speed management regulation and guidance processes there. I first came across the great work of the QLDC team while based there. So I know you're in fantastic hands, and I won't reiterate the technical points that have already been made, although certainly support all of those. I just thought it might be helpful to hop in and speak a little bit more to some of those questions that have come up around the consultation, in particular around responding to those numbers and noting that there is a particular section of road along Bob's Cove to Glenorchy or Waiuna Station where it is significantly higher level of opposition than for any other part of the speed management plan proposals. So the feedback that we see here was exactly what we would have expected, because we know that trends that play out in New Zealand and on the work across Australia that I do now, and typically around the world, that people tend to strongly support speed limit reductions where they live and strongly resist them in locations where they're driving through. So actually, we would have been surprised not to see this kind of feedback in this location. I think someone just noted earlier in the conversation, there are no residences along this particular section of road, although there are a lot of other access ways for recreation. So this type of feedback is entirely consistent with the nature of this piece of road. It does place a difficult question in terms of how that consultation is used, but it also means that for the most part, if a decision on the speed limit was always made based on the public response to proposed speed limit reductions in rural locations with no residences on them, nowhere would ever get a speed limit reduction for safety because this trend is so common. So I think hopefully it's helpful to understand it a little bit more in that context of this being very typical. We also noticed that typically people tend to really overestimate those negative impacts around travel time and really underestimate the safety benefits. So usually in the cases where speed limits are changed, even when there is resistance, which can peak right before a change is made, usually as soon as people get the opportunity to drive that road at the lower speed and realize that actually not only is it not having a significant impact on their travel time, it can actually make their overall travel time more reliable and the trip more relaxing because everyone is traveling at a similar speed, then typically that resistance tends to shift away pretty rapidly after the change is made. So I hope that is some additional context that's useful for as you're considering that level of negative responses to this particular section. I think probably also worth keeping in mind the absolute number of responses. So although as a proportion it may look very significant, thinking of that average absolute number of responses in relation to your overall population and in terms of the people travelling this road daily as well that would have their safety improved. So I'll hand back to the team unless Adrian there's anything else that you'd like me to touch upon there.
Thank you.
I was just wondering whether I could just comment on that answer then. I think the other thing we need to also think though is again that little section where the speeds increase, the road becomes a lot more open, a lot straighter. And so I do wonder, we're downplaying the thoughts and feedback from the community here, but I think there's some sense in what they're saying, which is that section of road is a bit safer than the other sections for going to 100. So just being a little bit of a devil's advocate here, okay, well, we can't just say this is what happens because the data shows us X, Y, Z, because
I think the reason why we don't recommend to introduce a higher speed limit just for that section is because once we gave the opportunity to the road users, we are sending an information to them saying the road is safe to travel at this high speed, but it's actually not. Even at the current 100 km/h speed limit, people are traveling below that speed, and the average operating speed is actually close to 80 km/h. But if we keep the majority of the network as 80, but just maintain the 100 for the end section, is actually sending the wrong information to the road users saying you can travel faster on this network, but it's not the right information that we want to get to them. So, and that's another reason why we consider this to be consistent with the remaining rural sections, because the road environment doesn't change a lot. And it just because the road probably geometry is a little bit straighter than others, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have the vertical change or the horizontal change along the network. So that's the reason why we don't want to break the network into different sections and introduce just based on
Sure,
the
that's-
operating speed.
Thank you, we get that, that's your advice. Probably, as I said at the previous workshop, I've been driving this road for 50 years. Know it fairly well. That ages me. But the other issue that those who, and it is, yeah, it's right, it's not a poll. It's for those who express that concern, it's a proportion of the community who want to keep it at 100 k's, whereas most of the community didn't make a submission. So, but however, that part of the road is appreciably straighter and the sidelines are better. Yes, there's some sharp turns in it, and yeah, probably most of us should go slower who know the road well. So one of the other concerns that they have expressed is that they're concerned about tourist traffic travelling slower than they are. And so they're expecting to be able to do 100 kilometres an hour there, whereas often there are vehicles that are not allowed to go over 90. So they're encountering them on it. So there's a frustration. Therefore, if there was an option to set for that portion of the road, and probably, yeah, not as far into Glenorchy as is indicated, because there's some issues there too, particularly where there's more people. But where 90 would possibly be, it would reduce the risk, it would reduce the frustration, and it would demonstrate that we're listening. And in any case, we're putting a whole lot of variability into the other 2/3 of the road anyway. I think it might be a compromise to consider for those people at Glenorchy, many of whom are actually new residents too. It's a rapidly changing community. I think it's giving a good signal that will hopefully bring about a safer and a better experience in driving on that road, rather than reducing it to 80, which is just going to frustrate a whole lot of people even more.
Thank you.
Can I just?
No, let's take this one. We need to hear from councillors first. We need to be careful about responding. Remember, this will come to you for a decision. This is getting feedback. Yep. So we're listening to that feedback. We'll go away and think about that. We'll make a recommendation based on road safety. At the council meeting, you may disagree with some of those recommendations, which is fine. But today is to try and understand some of those other views to make sure that we've got a good understanding. Just on that.
First a question, and then I'll give you my view. With the graph, how was that arrived at? My understanding of the road is that travelling on it, which I've done for 20-something years, it varies depending on time of day. It varies depending on season. Tourist season, it varies depending on winter versus summer, and how. So people drive it at very different speeds, tourists versus local. So, but in terms of how you got those 85th percentiles, what was the methodology for arriving at that? Because that then gave you that it'll only change your travel time by 3 minutes. I'm just interested in how you worked that out.
Right. So we took a year of traffic data from TomTom. So TomTom tracks lots of vehicles. Sorry, I don't have the number of traffic.
So who wouldn't check?
So they have
movements and vehicles.
Yeah. So I think the system tracks on mobile GIS data, and
so
we may able to give a little bit more background, but we use the whole year of traffic data. So there was lots of more traffic down to Queenstown end comparing with Glenorchy end, and that's including like private vehicles and also heavy vehicles who all use along that route.
So where would the if I was going to ask you, where are the risks or gaps in that data? Like where may it not be accurate? What might be missing?
I think because we did include a large number of traffic volume and that was the previous slide we used. So the data was collected 24 hours per day for the entire year of 2024. Queenstown site, we recorded over 130,000 vehicles, and Glenorchy site recorded over 24,000 vehicles. That's
Okay.
the actual travel speed got put into the
Okay.
data.
And it could, because I'm just trying to understand, because of the signal thing that Michelle mentioned, how does it get the ups and the downs and the,
That's so the TomTom data records the speed through the entire route and break the road into different sections. That's why you will see the numbers going up and down. That's
So it works even when it's offline.
Let's set.
Well, if it's GPS, it is.
it doesn't, so it'll take it the whole time.
Yeah,
So
GPS.
being online doesn't matter.
It's not.
Perfect. Okay, thanks. No, that's just wanted to understand. So my view is that there is inconsistency. So this idea that we're going to have more consistent travel time, I dispute that, because you just never know who you're going to meet at 50 versus 40 versus it's really variable. I think the beauty of having some sections where you can go a bit faster is that you do make up a little bit of time. Nobody steps on the gas, but it just means that you can get a run through, and if you've got a deadline that you're more likely to meet it. I think there will be incredible frustration having passed somebody going 40 k's an hour to get to a straight and have to go 80, knowing that you've got to get somewhere in time and you've been held up behind this camper van going at 50, because they do that. Anyway, that's just there's a frustration piece. I do think the crash data and the safety thing, I think we need to be really nuanced about that. I know speed, when you have a crash, it has an impact. I'm worried about this idea that we are solving our safety issues by simply reducing speed and not doing everything we can around CMA. Making sure that's adequate, making sure that we put recommended speed signs on corners, because we put a limit of 80, but some of those corners are 60, 40, but we don't have any recommended speed signs. So we just expect the tourists to go. I mean, the issue there is you say, hey, drive at 80, you're safe. If you hit that corner, you're not safe at 80. But the tourist doesn't know that, because elsewhere on roads where they've driven, they've got recommended speed signs. So I'm struggling with the singular approach, and I guess to sum it up, I would support making sure that the contractor is delivering what we're expecting of them with CMA, and that in the right places at the right times, that we've got enough resource into that. Get some shared recommended speed signs up, and I would support 90 from Bob's Cove to Queenstown. I think 80 is too much of a drop. I think it's going to frustrate people, and I think it may, I just don't see it.
Gavin, and then Kim.
I just had a quick response to, made the point about once you get past 26,000 or so, it straightens out a bit. Doesn't really straighten out fully. It's not like Mackenzie country, but there are straighter sections. But you can see they only go for 1 or 2 kilometres, and then every time it drops again, that's when people are hitting the corners or the narrow parts and having to slow down again. And it's continually dropping back down towards 80 at the end of each of those short sections.
You'll probably find it's because there's a really good view at each one of those.
But I mean, I'm fully in support of the proposal that you put forward.
Q.
I, like Gavin, am in support of revised limits. I think that 1, it's optical, and 2, actually, this graph contradicts the respondents, because the respondents all don't want change, or they want faster speed limits. But that's the behavioral bias that you mentioned. And behavioral bias is only people who are pissed off are going to respond to this, because actually we don't have a very good sample. And so the vast majority of the people going along this are already under the purple line most of the time. And the optics of seeing an 80-kilometer sign versus a 100-kilometer sign, if that saves just a few lives, from my perspective, it's worth it. Roads getting more crowded, people drive too fast, the probability of a crash drops exponentially from 100 to 80. And so I think we've got sort of a selection bias here from the respondents. We're already pretty much in the bracket anyway. So I'd support the revised limits.
Okay, right, I'm going to change your mind, Q. So if the Gibson
is terrible.
If the Gibson Community Association put in a submission of a proposal like this for Gibson,
it's NVTA.
Yeah, but
just
you're
They want it to go to 80
the Gibson Community Association would be one response, but it would be there to represent the community. And one of the responses was from the Glenorchy Community Association. And so it's not just to say there was only 57, because they represent that community. I've been there, right? So I know how it goes. It's not like speed and mix against what happened. But I guess the other thing is that that community association represents the first responders, the fireys, the ambulance people who come out to all of these crashes. Okay, so they're living and breathing that. I mean, you know, they are in fact, they're all part of it on the committee. So the fact that they're opposing this, I think is something that we should be cognizant of, because if there was a reason for some reduction, the people who are dealing with peeling people out the cars or off the road or whatever would have a view on that. And what we've heard consulted on separately, and they all support. That's FENS, that's not the Glenorchy fire team first responders. Okay. Secondly, we've heard that the road conditions already dictate an 80k speed limit. That's what we've heard. We've just been told that people are driving 80k's because of the road. So there is no benefit to reducing it from 100 to 80, because what we're hearing is it's a self-regulating road. And if we're wanting to reduce the consequences of an impact, we're not going to see any benefit, because the vast majority of the crashes, most of which we don't know which are speed related, but we're already told it's in a low speed environment. I struggle with this. You know, we've spent millions of dollars on crash barriers going up that road. Why would we have ever put in passing lanes? You know, we spent probably hundreds of millions of dollars on passing lanes, or not we, the roading agency, to allow people to pass. And the issue is people do need to pass. There would be, otherwise you would say, well, if you're allowed to pass, you might say 30 seconds. I mean, that's what you would never do it on that basis. So, and if you are limited to 80, and the school bus is limited to 80, there are many places, and then if it says 80, then so some people go 70, you just can't legally overtake. You can't use those passing lanes. You're going to be breaching the limit, and you will see frustration, and you'll get people probably exacerbating their behaviour. So I think it actually might take people in the wrong direction. But it's counterintuitive. We're saying that the road conditions require you to drive at 80, because that's what most people do. So there's no benefit in actually making the limit. We're just doing it for a perverse reason.
We've driven this road for so many years.
Yeah, a couple of questions for you. So if you say there's no benefit in reducing it, what's the benefit of leaving it as it is?
Well, what's the benefit of reducing it? If the benefit is if people are going slower, then the crashes are less impactful. So why stop at 80? Why not go to 70? Why not go to 60? Because there is no logic. And the information that we have is that for half of the crashes, we don't have any information about what the cause was. And if you look at, say, yes, there's a large number of crashes, all the crashes that have happened over the last sort of couple of months on that one spot, none of them would have been speed related. They've all been road condition and ice related. And they've, so it's, I think politically, and yes, conflict of interest, don't go on that road. But, there's lots of areas where we've heard support for doing something. And I think, if we want to build trust with our community and say that we're going to go and engage, I mean, because what we're going to do is the report and the recommendations that is the table down there, basically say, well, that's fine, but we can ignore that because they're not traffic engineers. So at what point do you just say there's no point bothering? Because there was no point bothering from what I think if we go down the lines.
At what point do you allow locals to be expert at some level in something,
So anyway, it's okay. That's yeah.
Well, I think the question I had for you was, so the first one was, there's no what's the benefit of keeping it up at 100, but the second question was, are you saying that no one exceeds the speed limit in a passing lane if you pass the car in front of them?
But it depends on what speed. If the speed limit is 80 and someone's going up the hill at 80, you can't pass it.
But are you saying no one can?
It's illegal precedent. You can, within reason, unfortunately.
Sorry.
My experience of driving in passing lanes is that you are not easy to overtake at a speed higher than the speed limit.
Yes.
Sorry, so we're not going to respond. We've heard the message.
Yeah.
Take it away. We'll consider it.
Thank you.
We do have a lot of other roads to get through.
Yeah.
I'm just conscious that I shouldn't say this, but if people live on the roads, we might get the same sort of response.
Yeah.
So happy we can whip through. We've heard, make notes. Remember, this is coming back to you as a council.
Yeah.
Meeting.
Well,
So I think the important thing is
from an officer's perspective, what do you reckon? Glenorchy Road aside, are the thorny ones that you want us to really give some clear direction on?
But I think we quickly went through, and you may also pick up whether, I think what we're recommending for the rest is like Glenorchy, no change what we went out with. So maybe if we can quickly whip through, go through them one by one, get a quick reaction to that if there's any in particular, so we can sort of get through today. So let's move on from Glenorchy, Queenstown, that's right.
But slowly.
At the moment, no, but he's capable.
Safely.
So what's the next one?
Next one, we move to the Maligan's roles. Right. So the consultation produced a fairly balanced response. Around 42% of respondents supported either the proposed reduction to 80 km/h or and further even more speed. The local residents are more supportive because they experience the day every day and recognize the increasing road activity along the road. Most people who are not supportive of the change come from the through traffic with concerns about the maintaining the travel efficiency. One reason for this is that Milligan's Road has increasingly been used as an alternative route of State Highway 6, especially during the peak travel times and the busy tourism season. The traffic volume has increased over 20% in recent years. This change has been resulted in greater safety concerns, especially from the local residents. The road serves residents, recreational users, and visitors while experiencing a relatively high number of crashes. Taking those factors into account, we consider that the proposed 80 km/h speed limit provides an appropriate balance between maintaining the road function and improving the safety for all road users. Any
questions?
I'm actually really torn on this one because it's kind of like 50-50, and I just have this fear that the intended consequence of dropping it to 80 to reduce that actually, because there's such areas of straight road, that then you'll have idiots that pass that don't need to. So yeah, I'm torn on this one. That's where I'm sitting, to be honest.
I represent bullet point number 4, and that I'm a through road user because I want to get around State Highway 6. Nevertheless, I'd support it being dropped to 80. And if I cheat and get caught, shame on me. But nevertheless, you know, especially given the fact that I know people on the road who really hate turning out onto the road because of idiots who are going too fast, I'd support reducing the speed. And there are also other through users like
Monica.
Yeah, anybody from Monica.
Cody.
Cody, you there?
Yeah, hi. What are my thoughts on Maligan's Road?
Yeah.
I think like there are definitely, I guess I get the sentiment behind this kind of thing. Yeah, I think the entire approach of how we've done things, I don't know if there's much scope for us to really change any of it anyway. So I get a little defeated on this kind of consultation because I've heard all the same arguments, to be honest. So yeah, I just don't expect much to change.
You're the one who can
Change
change
it now. That's the point.
All right, if I'm the one that can change it, I feel like keep it, well, do a sort of more staggered approach where you do certain sections that are problematic rather than worrying so much about the whole consistency thing. But I guess it goes against what, you know, the approach has been. So not to be overly defeated, that's just, yeah, my observation.
I support that, Cody.
Thank you. No, I support the 80 drop because there's been a high concentration of users of the cycle trail there. And it's one of the key cycle trails now. So it's probably one of the key reasons I would like to support it. The other one is there's some significant intersections there that can be quite tricky and dangerous if you pull out into that main road area. I think Little's Road, and I can't remember what the other one is now. So yeah, and it's just getting a lot busier now. So
Any other views? I should try and keep moving. Yeah, I agree. Again, I've driven that road a lot. In fact, lately I've been using it a bit similarly as an alternative route. But given the number of bikes, even at this time of the year, and other vehicles coming to those intersections, and in fact approaching the intersections, it's becoming a less safe place. And I think, and even it's a bit like the Minoki Road. I don't want to go back and revisit that, but even where you can do 100 kilometres now, you can only just get there, then you have to start slowing down again. So I think there's good rationale for this approach. I think it would be safer. And yeah, go.
I feel like I drive it all the time. I'm always at 100 safely and fine, but I'm also in support of being safer. So
No,
There'll be any other views, others taking this on board?
Kind of the same as
Order.
the beach.
Yeah.
Cyclists.
So just, there's a few different throughs.
but no, I think I'm with Cody that it should stay to 100.
90 would be nice. It'd be nice to have this 20 kilometres an hour, but that's an awful lot of a drop. It blows my mind. 90 is so much more acceptable. It's much easier to.
Yeah, but we've talked about this. We need to keep it at the 20s.
I totally disagree. I totally disagree. So yeah, I would support 90 on this one probably as well, but look, no evidence.
I know we're talking about speed limits today, but I still think, Mulligan's Road, there's known spots where, if we've got ice or we've got winter, so what are we doing about, some temperature sensing, warning lights that, give the, because I mean, that is going to do more for messaging than the speed limit on the side of the road.
Yeah, because you should drop, you'd drop right back to 50 potentially, but if the road says, oh no, you're safe at 80, but
we
need to be more nuanced, find ways to, and yes, it costs a bit more, but maybe.
But a lot of the landscape has been changed by bike trails, a lot.
Yeah,
notwithstanding that, and I'm saying that this is an act, because if you look at the crash data, I would imagine a huge amount of crash data on that road will be winter related with ice as a cause. So maybe we can actually do something there.
Conversation though, isn't it?
It's not if we're leaning on the crash data to support the drop.
So, my only thought on that is that there are a lot of icy roads across the district. So, you pick lane routes, and the technology is, we've seen how messages saying people be cautious driving. So, but can we just move on from Mulligan's Road, please? Okay. That's right. Just trying to make sure we get through all of them today. Yeah.
Okay, move to Lake Howea. So we have a proposed 50 kilometer per hour chance for cemetery roads and domain roads. Overall, the local community supported the reducing speed limit, although the opinions differed on exactly what the speed limit should be. So some people preferred an interim speed of 60 kilometers per hour rather than the proposed 50 kilometers per hour. The local residents strongly supported the lower speed limits, reflecting the changing in land use and growing residential environment around Lake Howea. And when we review the speed limit along those two roads, because there are development happening on both sides of the road, and also there's a cycle route, lots of recreational users along cemetery roads now. So we think we will go to a 50 kilometer per hour speed directly, not an interim.
What do the resident councillors think?
3 of home.
Cody's.
Yeah, but if you have.
Okay, Cody.
Yeah, I think this is an inconsistent one. Everything else we do, we go to 80s and 60s, and for some reason we're going to 50 here. And I think, you know, the submissions did say quite accurately that dropping it from 80 to 50 will cause a lot of people to just not be compliant, and it'll risk sort of taking away the sentiment of it. I also think it's a bit of an overreaction. I think, you know, decoupling Domain Road from Cemetery Road, they are different roads. I don't think they need to necessarily share the same speed limit. I also think from like a roading design point of view, that Golf Course Road at 70 kilometers has a lot of driveways that enter it, and there's not a driveway that's connected to this. They're all entrances into subdivisions. So I don't think it should be treated as such. And then the other sort of justification on the report, it shows that we're treating those rural commuter routes at 60 Ks, and this is, like I say, an anomaly out of that. So wondering how staff are going to reflect the feedback from the community on this and find a rational way forward, or if it's just going to be, you know, yeah, ignored again.
What would you suggest for each of those four, Cody, for the four different sections? Would you take the whole lot?
Well,
to
I mean,
70?
yeah, I mean, I would personally see 70 would be the where everybody could go, yeah, that makes sense. That's reasonable. And if you're doing a small section of 70 at the end of it, closer to Muir Road, everyone will ask, well, why have you changed that but not further down? Why don't you just do the whole road at 70? Because if it's all about consistency, we've created 100 meters of a different speed limit. So yeah, 70 I'd support.
For the whole.
Well, no, for Cemetery Road, I do think, Domain Road's a different story. If you want to make it consistent, I'd make it 60 throughout. But I appreciate that a 50 and a 70 is actually a better result, but it's obviously contrary to how we're sort of categorizing things, which is always the irony I find with this stuff.
So you would take that top line and go 80 to 70, not 80 to 50?
Yeah, I would go that 80 to 70 that's proposed closer to Muir Road, all the way down to Domain Road, so that whole way across Cemetery Road. Because of the roading topology that's there, they're all entrances into subdivisions. They're not. There's not a single driveway going off that road, so I don't know why we're treating it like it's a residential road.
Right. As you're saying.
Yeah. Just to add something a bit more positive, I think a lot of it's good to see strong support for Windmill Corner. And I've had a lot of reactions from people saying, no, we've put them in illegally at the moment, but that reduction has been useful. And I think most people are pretty sensible about that as a way forward. So happy to support that. Just add to the 2 cents.
I personally think that should be 70, but that's.
So just as a non-resident, Cody, I'm just wondering, is that future-proof for the next decade or so, those speed limits?
Well, I think the actual subdivisions have been built with that acknowledged as an arterial route to get through Hawea, rather than that being treated as, but there is going to be a school north of Cemetery Road at some point. And so, but that school's not going to be built till after 2030. So it's like you can't make a speed limit now for 6 years away. And I think that at the moment it's inappropriate to make it a 50K zone. Because a big, long, straight road, any of the cycle routes, they're 3 meters off the road and they're on their own dedicated path. And in the same way, you'll get a whole bunch of non-compliance, which will cause more, friction and tension, because there's a lot of tradies that go up and down there. And yeah, when you're along the same issue that we have at Glenorchy Road, when it's a long, straight road, people are going to go what's intuitive to them. And yeah, doing a speed limit where people don't listen to risks undermining the entire thing, I think.
Looking at the feedback, though, those who did respond appear to be very much in favour of 50.
More opposed.
No, there's more opposed.
No, 16 to 14.
No, 16.
16 out of 40 approved it. It's a third.
Yeah, 8 plus. What's higher than speed?
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I haven't been doing that.
It's roughly, but that's why maybe a 70 is.
Yeah.
Nice. Everybody loves 70. It's just a good number.
Sorry, just to explain why we have proposed 50K for this section is because this is not like a settlement land use. This one is more like a semi-urban or urban boundary land use. So this one is not quite the same as the 60K sections we were talking about for the rural settlements. They actually in different land use.
The confusing thing, I guess, with that is what other roads have we made 50? We've either made them 40s because they're residential or 60 because they're commuters. And this has always been my issue is that there's
Yeah.
no consistency throughout the network and it's all argued about this being consistent. You know, if you're going to make that claim, you sort of have to be consistent. So,
Yeah, so I think it would be, as far as consistency is concerned in relation to that, but also this area, I would pitch for 60 on both roads, so that you don't have to worry. Yeah, I think.
I think 60 on both or 50 on one and 70 on the other.
Yeah, I think 60 both is more, it makes it easier for people to recall.
And so you got 40, 180.
Yeah, I don't like
I
that.
mean, it's really.
So how about we,
The 100 one is a bit of a
So
concern.
I'm hearing that we maybe have a look at this one and come up with some alternative figures.
Okay, should we move on to the next one?
Right, this is the last example I have for these hot businesses. Wilmore Corner is one of the section we have heard lots of feedback requests before before developing the speed management plan, and we have listened and added this section into the program. Yeah, not surprised, during the public consultation, we received very strong support.
Where is it?
Oh, it's right, so what? We're not
Is that how we?
Grant Bridge,
Yes.
you head through to Hardware, and then it's just when you drop down to where the school, just before the school, just before the Hardware school, and
Oh, okay, I know where you are. Yeah, or roughly here.
It's just a very strong corner.
Yeah.
So that's.
And it's 100 right now.
Yeah, there's been a big threshold treatment just applied there to stone or school work.
Yeah.
yeah.
The big corner is the windmill corner. My only thing is that straight being 60 is like a bit over the top, but I get why change that and then continue 60 everywhere else, so whatever.
Yeah,
Fine.
I share that view. I think it's like one of the compromises I go,
Yeah, and like,
it's
you can see
imperfect,
if
but
there's
fair
a
enough.
policeman, probably.
Yeah.
The feedback supported it, that's an easy one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's easy. I'm happy to support it.
Drama fast.
Right, I think oh, sorry, one more slide. Just following the consultation, we have made 3 adjustments to the recommended speed limits. So Victoria Flat Road has been divided into 2 different speed zones. A new industrial zone has been developed at the end of Victoria Flat Road. Due to the high volume of heavy traffic and the road geometry, it's recommended the intersection of Victoria Flat Road to be reduced to 50 kilometers per hour, whereas connecting to the private development. This change will have a minor impact on the travel time, but improve the overall heavy vehicle safety. And the proposed 40 kilometer per hour section on the top of Coronet Peak Road has been adjusted to 50. This is due to the setting of speed limit rule. The minimum speed limit that we can reduce for we can introduce for stopping places is 50 kilometer per hour. To ensure the compliance with the rule, is recommended 50 kilometer per hour speed limit to be implemented on the topper section of Coronet Peak Road. And there is a minor change at the Melligans Road and Coronet Peak Road intersection. This is due to the change in the intersection upgrade plan. This extension is to reflect the current location of the existing speed limit signs.
Sorry,
Yeah, so yeah, we are recommending.
So don't finish the last one, is that close to
Yeah.
Path School? Or was the yes, sorry.
Is on the, no, so it's.
It's where you come down from Coronet Peak, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
The T
That's the
intersection.
Yes, it's easier if I show it on the map.
Yeah, I think that's there anyway.
Victoria Flats Road, that's a very short section of road anyway.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that it was even 100 kilometers. I presume that there's essentially the yards which is the new industrial area you've checked with the various people there, especially the person who is promoting that.
Sorry.
Okay.
For the Melgans Road and Coronet Peak intersection, the 50K is just going to be
Yeah.
extended 20 meter to this direction, and this is the current posted.
Yeah, that's good.
So the green is
Right.
That's the current proposed.
oh,
So you simply can't now.
Yeah, because then you have to slow down past it at the moment. It doesn't make sense the way it's
That's all,
going.
yeah. It's 50 at the moment though.
No,
Yeah.
only once you get past,
It's the same little.
once you get past where those cars are down the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
that's,
you're into that.
yeah. So on Coronary Peak Road itself, do we administer all of that road or does NZ Ski run or did they hand it over to us to manage?
So it's our road, but they manage the winter maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah, during that period.
So it's now all consistent, 50K is what it should be.
Yeah, so rather than having a season of time.
Yes. Cool.
It's maybe doing
I mean, it just would have been speed management workshop if we didn't talk about Lady Smile. And I'm just gonna make a comment that we've all got in our letterboxes, it's due to the roadworks, is that's going to 50. Probably too slow for what people want.
We have backslide and state highways, could we maybe?
Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't realise you would have to go in a minute, but
It's 50 for the construction.
period, but we don't know, they don't know what it is
No,
afterwards.
there's
yet.
something like
Yeah, most people think it's 80, don't they? But it's,
100 Ks.
yeah, but it's 100.
It's very hard to get to 100, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. It's too much traffic.
So after they've done their go, it has to be 70 or less for the traffic lights.
I don't know what the design is after the traffic lights.
No, they don't know, Alliance said they don't know last
That's
night
what
at the
Transport
meeting, so.
Agency told us.
But for the next 18 months, we've got 50, so we'll take it as a win.
But there's also going to be traffic lights at the Shorting roundabout
Yeah.
as well, which will be also done. And there'll be another set of
And
lights
then in the middle, yes.
which is meaningless, but right.
But back to a point that you made, John, at the start about getting us moving, sometimes reduced speeds do make the traffic flow better.
They do. You're too right.
Just on a, I was just on the 70 kilometres with 50 kilometres per hour in the winter period. I just found that really interesting because I hadn't come across it before. I'm not driving it, I guess.
Isn't it the
But
current?
We have it.
yeah,
A couple of seasonal
yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of the rest of the district. Why do we not think about the difference? And then it made me think about the graph for Glenorchy, and you've averaged it over a year. Winter speeds will be much lower than summer speeds. And so, and speed times, we don't take them on an average, what am I trying to say here? One, for Glenorchy, if you've taken an average across the whole year, people drive a lot slower in winter, therefore you're forcing them, you're assuming they're only gonna
Why
let.
is it winter?
And then how can you
We've
have it?
actually had quite a bit of pressure from the emergency services to remove seasonal speed limits because it's too confusing for enforcement and for people using different speed limits. So a good example,
Yeah,
we had seasonal speed limits in Wanaka, on the aspiring road. But I think we've changed through this process in the fact that it's currently a peak one.
it's very strange though, isn't it? Because one comment from them is, oh, it's a bit confusing. We're saying that this is the cheapest way to manage safety on our network. We can't. Well, we just said that, we said this is, well, a very low cost, I took from that, that's probably the cheapest way to make it safety interventions.
Maybe, I don't know.
Well, it is. I mean, it is something that we do.
So therefore, we're looking at, it's just this balance of getting the CMA right, getting why are we not looking at winter speed limits when we don't seem to be able to get?
Yeah, that's something that we can review and have another look at, because I think it is a really valid point. I guess we've been given direction from, part of the emergency services to remove them, because they do cause confusion. But I mean, I think it is a valid point that we do try and.
I don't think it would be that confusing, honestly. I just don't understand why, if everyone knew at a certain time of year that the speed limits would change because it's about to get icy, the speed limits are dropping anyway. It's much better to do that than take a graph averaging across the whole year, and then forcing a community to drive at 80.
I guess
when normally in summer they would be driving a lot faster.
what I would say is the majority of deaths and serious injuries that we have from road crashes are actually in summer on long straight roads. And a lot of it, it seems counterintuitive. We did quite a big exercise a while ago looking at it, because I think intuitively we feel like the crashes are happening in winter on icy roads. And that includes state highways, that statement. So it is those big, fast. That's in our district, yeah. And maybe it's something that we need to revisit. We are looking at doing some further analysis on.
I think it would be good to see the data, because it would really help to make better decisions if we.
It's on our radar to do, so I'll try to accelerate.
When you look at those particular roads, Glenorchy Road is much quieter in the winter time than the summertime. But it might be useful to get that measurement over time. Coronet Peak Road is totally different.
Yeah.
Because, and it's mentioned here about the chain fitting. So that it should be a consistent speed limit, but that CMA is not particularly relevant on that road. It's about the vehicles coming and going on the road.
It's about the traffic.
Yeah, snow and it's a combined.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, it's people, who've done a bit too much air freight skiing. You should, exactly. So
It's a bit more complex, but did you imply, Tony, that people on push bikes actually follow the speed limit earlier?
I did not think.
So, okay, sorry.
I was thinking coming down now. I do wonder on Coronet Peak though, winter there are a lot more traffic.
Well, exactly.
So, what do we need to go to now? Any other ones?
A quick question on Victoria Flats Road. Are we simply changing the speed limit, or if we liaise with the industrial area, with the yards?
Or has that happened already?
So they have already put up the signs because the construction.
They put up the signs.
Yeah, they've sort of instigated that.
I'll be proactive safety minded people.
So go with it.
Right, next one.
All right, not too much more to go. So in the online survey, we asked submitters to suggest any other speed limits that we should consider for review in the next SMP, likely to be in about 2 or 3 years. This was combined with feedback that we had emailed in, as well as any other roads that came up through the survey commentary. So sometimes people clicked a drop on the map and left a comment wasn't related to where they left their marker. So we picked up those feedback as well. Analysis of this feedback resulted in 127 additional pieces of feedback about speed on 45 local roads. So all 45 roads or areas on this list, we will basically use that as a starting point for the next speed management plan and review those there.
Numbers on my presentation. Did it get up?
We updated it.
So that was the check to see whether you agreed to material.
Did we get a prize?
Obviously, we
You never did that.
I just assumed it was inflation.
Bit of that. It is. Main thing to note is just over half of these submissions were requesting reduced speeds, and probably not surprisingly, 3/4 of the submissions were on roads in Upper Clutha, with particular favourites being Ballantyne Road, Beacon Point Road and Ardmore Street.
Was Ballantyne to increase the speed?
Yeah, so of the submissions on roads in Upper Clutha, 61% are requesting roads to be considered for an increased speed limit.
Would you even do that?
We'll review it.
What roads were they? Valentine?
Top ones are Ballantyne, Beacon Point Road. Quite a few for Wanaka Mount Aspiring Road as well. Tried that with both increase and decrease. For the state highways, we received 56 submissions relating to speed on sections of state highways in our district, and all of these were requesting decreased speed. Particular areas of concern to include Ladies Mile, Arrow Junction, Frankton to Jacks Point and Kingston, and Frankton Road. In the Upper Clutha, there's pretty strong concern around speed from Mount Iron roundabout through to both Albert Town and Anderson Road, as well as from Albert Town Bridge to Hawea. Speed on state highways is set by NZTA, and we're compiling a letter outlining these areas of public concern for submission to NZTA as a formal request to review speed on these state highway sections. NZTA are currently consulting on targeted speed limit reviews for the Central and Lower South Island based on community concerns. However, disappointingly, they didn't reach out to us about this, and there are no sections of state highway in the Queensland Lakes District included in that consultation. So, bit of advocacy work to be done there.
We do.
So we're going to do a letter to submit. And you can also submit individually. We'd encourage your community associations to submit. There's a link on the NZTA website. So you can just.
Can I add one to that? The Luggett one, you know, you said
It's pretty much all the state highways came up. It's not. It's
So we'll follow that up and get that submission through. But basically from here, we'll just pass to Alison to finish off.
Yeah, so I guess this is just to round up what the next steps are. We've got a council meeting next month where we'll just put forward the plan and we'll take on the feedback that we've heard today and consider whether there are any alterations or whether we need to make any at that meeting. We'll take, can take that feedback at the time. Once we have an approved speed management plan, we then have to submit it to the Director of Transport at NZTA. So that's the process that then creates it into the National Speed Limit Register. So I think we've talked about it before. The National Speed Limit Register is something you can all access and anyone can access in the country. And so that'll be uploaded and then we'll be going through an implementation and a sort of education informing piece for the community about where we've got changes and what the program and the rollout will look like. Because, we'll be a bit phased because we can't do everything all at the same time. But you'll get more detail of that as we progress through that process. Yes.
Can I ask a question beyond once all the speed changes have been made? How does the GPS systems in your cars get updated?
So that's the benefit of the supposed benefit of having a national land transport, national speed limit register. So they should all be pulling that into.
Does it happen instantly or is it
I'm afraid I don't know the technical.
It's depending on your vehicle brand and how quickly they upgrade their system.
Right.
So they had to get connected to the National Speed Limit Register.
Once they update.
Yeah, once they update and the vehicle company will update their database. Yeah.
Second part to that question, from our perspective, maybe an infrastructure question. When we put signs up for those transition periods, do we ever put signs up in the middle of those speed area zones? If it's an 80k zone.
Yeah, so there are rules within the traffic controls manual to say when you should or shouldn't put repeaters, if that's what you mean.
Why should?
Or not shouldn't. Sometimes it's in a short period, like it just wouldn't.
So at locations we think the operating speed may go a little bit higher, we will put up repeater signs to remind people about the speed limit.
Where it goes slower. Like Franklin Road, people drive 50 k's along all the time, but it's not ours. But you know what I mean? It's really annoying because there's no 70 k's on signs throughout. Is that something we?
I refuse. I see it.
70. Oh, you shall.
If there are any specific areas, you can always raise a request. You think there are.
Okay. All
right. That's an interesting point you raised about updates. My wife's a nurse with Health New Zealand, and because they have cut back on their expenditure, they're not paying for the subscription for their vehicles, phones, so that the GPS gets updated.
Oh,
it's real.
You can go faster than.
No, they just don't know where they're going.
Oh, right. Oh,
so they're now less efficient than they were before when it's those vehicles.
There we go. Are we good?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for your time, councillor. Staff. Thank you.
Thanks for tricking around the district.
Generates a lot of
does, doesn't it?